Okay, and with that, we are ready to start. Thank you so much for coming to this mental health town hall today. I'm Dr. David Morgan. I'm a licensed psychologist and the Director of Mental Health Awareness here at Silicon Slopes. And we are partnering with Brandy's team at Promise to Live, and very, very glad that you can be here to talk about these issues, to continue the mental health conversation. You might be aware that June is Men's Mental Health Month. Anyone know that? Some people knew that. Sean did because he has my slides. He always knows everything before you guys do. March is Women's Mental Health Month, if you didn't know that. May is for everyone. We just had that one. So I thought to myself, well, why? Why do we need one for just men? And I pulled up a couple statistics. Deaths by suicide are 65 to 70% men. It's more than half, well more than half of suicides that are completed are done by men. And men die of suicide almost 4 times as often as women. And that's just the issue with suicide. That's not the issue with any other mental health issue that you might consider. So I thought about this. Anyone remember this movie from the 90s, City Slickers? Who's seen that? Okay, Billy Crystal, right? If you're as old as I am, you remember that movie. And it's about a group of these worn-out men that decide that they're going to go on this dude ranch where they're kind of shepherded around by professionals. And Billy Crystal ends up being confronted by the lead guy. His name is Curly, played by Jack Palance. And Curly is like the last real man, right? He's like this gruff guy who, and Billy Crystal's terrified of him the whole time. And as I was thinking about this idea of why are we focusing on men's mental health, because sometimes I think that this is what we think we need to be like, right? We're tough, we're strong. I'm speaking as a man. We're tough, we're strong. We don't need any help, right? We can do everything, and so we don't need to reach out. What happens when you talk to someone, you say to a man, hey, how are you? What's his answer? I'm fine, right? And that's about it. Where clearly he may not be fine, especially considering the statistics regarding mental health issues. One of the things that I think is a misunderstanding is that it takes more courage to be tough and pretend like there's nothing going on than to actually say there is something going on. And I'm here to tell you it's 10 times more courageous to admit that you've got something wrong than to say I'm fine. So if there's any of you out there that are of the I'm fine variety, keep that in mind. If you're looking to be Jack Palance, if you're looking to be Curly and be courageous, your answer is not I'm fine. Your answer is, I'm struggling today. And I could really use some help with that. One of the things that we need to do is we need to elevate our communication. You'll hear about this. Brandy talks about this all the time. Just reach out. Just say something. Just inquire. And if someone looks like they've got it all put together, they probably don't. Most people have got something going on. Whether they need help with it or not, it doesn't matter. But even just to get that reassuring, hey, how are you doing today? That makes a big difference. It's made a big difference in my life. I know as a psychologist, it makes a huge difference in the people I talk to, just to say, hey, how are you doing? Many, many years ago, one of my professors, he was working with a woman in counseling, and they worked together for about 9 months, and she was done. She was better, at least for the issues she was struggling with. And so as they were finishing up, he said, hey, I'd like to talk to you about how things went. And she said, I can tell you the exact time when I turned the corner. And he says, oh, I'd love to hear it. I want to hear what was it. And he thought it was some grand intervention that he did, maybe some thing that he had said to her. And she said, I had just got my hair cut, and I came to my session, and I came in, and you said, oh, your hair looks nice. She says, that was it. That was what turned it around for me, because you noticed, you said something, and I felt seen. And I think that's the important thing, is as we communicate with one another, as we express ourselves, that's going to make a difference. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Brandy. As in previous town halls, some of the issues we discuss are of a sensitive nature. I'm a psychologist. We've got Zach back here, who's a mental health clinician as well. We're going to be in the back, and if there's anything that comes up and you say, I just need to talk with someone right now, come grab us and we'll chat for a bit. So I'm going to turn it over to Brandy.
All right, thank you guys for being here. That's part of the solution, is showing up and learning about what we're missing and what we're not missing. I was at an event yesterday, and I was sitting at a random table that we just decided to sit at. And as we sat there, pretty soon everybody kind of started talking, and I found out that the girl I was sitting next to had just lost her brother to suicide, and he was 42. And this is why I'm up here, because I sent my daughter off to Thailand for 2 weeks. She just graduated, and we almost lost her to suicide. It's not lost on me that we have a second chance, and all of you are here. That means we have a chance. It's 100% preventable. So I just want to share, promise to live is every 40 seconds, somebody dies by suicide. And the rates are much higher for men. They're more lethal. We want you, if you haven't, to make the promise to live. And what is that? That's a promise right now that you guys will say, even if I'm not struggling, I'm going to just look at me and make the promise that if I ever find myself in that dark day, if everything goes wrong, if I want to give up and I don't know what to do, that I'm going to reach out to someone, anyone, a friend, a family member, a trusted resource like NAMI or AFSP, or call or text 988. Studies show if you guys can make this promise ahead of time, we're more likely to keep you. Also share it on social media. Often also people will ask me, Brandy, I know you've been doing this for 3 years. What are the signs? What do I look for? Don't do that. Don't look for signs. Most of you are looking at your phone most of the time anyway. You're not going to see them. It's one of those things where with my child, all the signs were the same things that you go through puberty. The signs might be the stress of a new tech startup. The signs might be my kids are giving me grief, my relationship's on the rocks. Don't look for signs. Ask the questions. Honest questions, get honest answers. You will not plant an idea. So ask the people you love, your children, your spouse, your coworkers, hey, how you doing? Are you feeling suicidal? And then we talk about ask. What does that mean? It means acknowledge them. You don't have to have all the answers. We're scared. It's like, well, what if they say yes? Then what do I do? I just ask. Sit there with them. Acknowledge, I'm really sorry. That's heavy. That must be hard. What can I do for you? There's resources, right? And you know what I do for everyone that does that? I say, can you just promise to stay? Can you promise to get through this? Can you promise to contact me or someone else you love? Can you just make the promise to stay? And if they're struggling, then I ask somebody, don't leave them alone. Go be with them. Ask, acknowledge. S, support. K, keep in touch. So ask the people around you, keep in touch. Today's going to be a good day. It is always hard. I try to wear bright colors because sometimes what we're talking about is a little tricky and it's a little hard, and I know that there's a lot of sensitive feelings in here. I really do want you guys to talk to Dr. Morgan or Dr. Bullock. If for any reason you want to step out and just grab them, please grab them. Asking for help is a sign of courage and strength. It's not a sign of weakness. So today we've got an impressive panel here. I'm going to not spend too much time introducing them because I want to make sure we have ample time for them to share their stories. But we have Tuia'ana with the I Love You Bro project. We have Brandon, who runs Pando and has had an experience. Carrie Hill with PR Forum, but she's also had an experience in Curtis Morley. These are some of the best people you'll ever meet. But outside of that, these guys hit this from every aspect. So will you please listen with your whole heart? Whether it's for you or for somebody you love or somebody you'll meet, listen to these guys and take it in, and let's see how we can help those around us. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe.
Awesome. Check one. How you guys doing? Good. Talking about suicide and mental health doesn't have to be a downer, guys. It doesn't. We can be upbeat, and we can freely talk about it with a smile if you feel like you need to. My name is Tuia'ana. I'm with the I Love You Bro project. So cool to be here with you guys. I had a special, I should preface, I'm a normal dude, just a average Joe, literally. I had a special, beautifully horrible experience with suicide. We were on our way to a basketball game, me and my kids. and came across a young man in a suicide crisis, young dad, and the weight of that moment was, as you can imagine. I said a quick prayer saying, okay, what can I do for this guy? And I had a feeling to just open my arms to him. And most of the time when I approach another dude, it can be a little intimidating. I was actually thought that I would make the situation worse by just being who I am and looking like what I look like. But I said a quick little prayer, had a feeling just to open my arms to him, and as I approached him, I just said, "I love you, bro." And I said it over and over again. And luckily it was the right thing to say. Luckily it's the only thing I actually said to him this whole time. And he felt like good enough to come be with me, and I hugged him, and I just sat and cried with him. And it was a beautiful, again, terrible experience. From this experience, it pushed me, I should say, shoved me into the arena of mental health. Again, this is 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago. And a normal person who hated suicide, but just was, just a normal person. And now, from that experience, I felt this is my life now. This is what I have to do. As I got to know Aaron, who's my new little brother, I loved off the ledge, so to speak, I asked him, what were you missing that day, man? And, what got you to that point? For him, he said, I had no connection. And we all know connection is hope in our life. He had no knowledge to help himself. He had no money to go see a therapist or a counselor. Again, normal dude here, me listening to this stuff. And so I logically was like, okay, well, let me go home. I went home, Googled men, suicide, Utah, what's for me? And surprisingly, there's really nothing. When I say nothing, there are great programs out there, but nothing campaigning specifically for men and men's mental health, men's suicide prevention. What I did find on Google is that men are pretty much about 80% of suicides. So 8 out of 10 suicides are men, yet we haven't had any specific representation. So I was like, well, this ain't gonna work. So I started the I Love You Bro Project, which is a nonprofit specifically for men's mental health, men's suicide prevention, but also ongoing development, improvement for men. So what does that mean? What do you guys do? We have 2 weekly support groups, one in West Jordan, one in Provo. We're opening up 2 more, one in Pleasant Grove, one in South Provo. It's gonna cover our southern Utah County. Places, guys don't like to hear the word safe place. So we use like judgment-free, stuff like that. Judgment-free spaces for guys to come, and we facilitate connection there. They can open up, talk about whatever it is. Some guys have beautiful marriages, some are divorced, some have pornography addiction, some have alcohol addiction, you name it. Some guys just can't open up to someone at home because they just don't want to feel like they're burdening their loved ones. All it takes for a man to get into suicide ideation is one big thing. Aaron, my new little brother, happened to have a terrible thing happen to him within a couple days prior to that. And suddenly he was questioning the value he brought in his life. He felt he wasn't worth living. It was actually going to be better for others if I don't live. And so when you think about women have, there's 4 times or 10 times more, I think, with attempts. Men, it's 4 times more completions of suicide. And we don't need a history, a mental health history of depression, things like that, for us to get into that space. And so these support groups that we offer, I don't know, is this mic even working? I feel like I'm just talking without it anyway. It's a place for guys to come, and then they can connect with others. And we do this weekly. And it's just a little, little pressure release. Not solving all the problems, but it gets guys at least to start sharing a little bit. We also offer free bi-weekly workshops where we can talk about addiction, talk about relationships, bring in clinicians to teach us about stuff that normal people don't want to talk about. We just had one with a breathing technician on how to breathe and how terrible I am at breathing, but how it can help you so much in your life. We also offer free therapy to guys who can't afford it. The challenge is always going to be getting guys into the door. I have so many guys who pull up, we look through the window, and they're looking at their phone, they're looking at the address phone, and then there's that come to Jesus moment where they choose to get out of the car and walk into our group, or they turn around and drive away, and I'll tell you 8 out of 10 times, they turn around and drive away. So I'm here to crush freaking stigma, especially with men. I'm a normal dude. Most of us are normal people. And we all deserve a chance and opportunity to talk and to connect with others. So that's all I had, really quick. I appreciate being here. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Joe. I think I'm going to take most of my time just sitting here, working through difficult feelings. That's honestly one of the hardest things about mental health and suicidal ideation. I specifically deal with what's called OCD anxiety, among other things. And I struggle living with uncertainty. I'm uncertain exactly what I'm going to say today. I appreciate what Joe said as I'm Aaron. A little bit about me. I am married, have 5 children from 2 to 12, and I own my own business. I own a mobile and web app development custom shop, and I've owned that since 2017. And I've struggled with mental health since I was in junior high. Have a long story of different things from junior high until today that I don't have time to get into, but I just wanted to, as Brandy asked if I would speak, I thought about what can I share that would be beneficial and helpful to anyone that is going through maybe something similar to myself, I thought. And then as I was watching on LinkedIn about this town hall, somebody named, I believe it was Tom Telford, he, and Joe touched on these points as well, talked about the 3 key factors to better mental health is knowledge, compassion, and connection. And so I'm just going to briefly talk about those 3 in the context of my life. Again, in junior high, I didn't know what I was experiencing. I was a very highly driven, highly motivated person. I did well in school, did well in a lot of other activities. And all of a sudden in junior high, I was waking up feeling not myself. I wasn't motivated. I was feeling depressed. At that time, I didn't even know the difference between anxiety and depression. My poor parents had no idea what was going on. All they knew was what they were taught of, hey, like, you can get through this, just keep working hard. And it wasn't until I was about 30 years old that I realized that I actually wasn't feeling depressed because I had clinical depression. But I was putting so many expectations on myself and my anxiety of living with that uncertainty that I would get so anxious that I couldn't handle it and I didn't know what to do. And so my body just shut down. And so I'm grateful for that knowledge of, hey, what is actually happening inside my brain? What are the things that are making me feel this way? I started getting curious and asking questions. I went to therapy. I changed medications, and things started to improve. I'm grateful that it is Men's Health Awareness Month as an entrepreneur. Probably a lot of you here in Silicon Slopes know about being an entrepreneur, how difficult it is, the weight of taking care of other people's families, payroll. Do I pay myself first? Do I pay myself last? Do I take care of my family first? Do I take care of other people's family first? And I got into this habit of my job here on earth is to help other people. And it's not to help myself. And my feelings don't matter. And I didn't know how to talk about that to anyone. And so I kept bottling that up. I didn't talk to anyone. I decided I needed to be tough. And I just kept trying to push through and ignore the feelings of inadequacy. And then I found myself, after some unfortunate experiences of not thinking clearly and taking actions in a not very healthy way, that I found myself in a residential treatment center in September of 2023. So this is obviously still pretty fresh on my mind. And one of the stigmas I also would love to help people understand is, even after somebody goes through a lot of therapy and they've gone through a residential treatment center, we still struggle. It's still a daily battle for me. Every week I have to remember to promise myself and promise my family that I'll still be here. I'm grateful for this bracelet. I think it'll be a healthy reminder. So tying that into the compassion part is, I'm so grateful for the people who are compassionate and ask those questions. How are you doing? Where are you at? What can I help you with? Or more importantly, they did things to help me. It's really easy to be like, hey, how can I help you? But doing little things unsolicited is really helpful. The most difficult part for me is the connection. Especially for men, it's, hey, I am here to provide for my family. I am here to provide for other people, and I don't want to go out and have a manicure and pedicure party. I don't want to get together with a bunch of guys and watch movies or do different things. It's very much out of my comfort zone. And so what I hope to get across is simply create the connection while you're in a good frame of mind, because every time I ideate about suicide, it's past the point of reaching out in connection. Other people, especially my wife, who's over here, who do you need to talk to? I don't want to talk to anyone at that point. I've already made decisions in my mind of what I'm going to do. I've made decisions thinking unclearly. And so the most important thing is create the connection you need before you get into those situations. And as Brandy said, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here, is make that promise that you'll stay here for yourself, first and foremost, and for those you love.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Carrie Hill, and this is pretty heavy topic, right? Are we feeling a little heavy right now? Beautiful light and beautiful stories, but this is really heavy. So I want to take an opportunity to ask you to engage with me right now in this moment. I was born in South Carolina, and so we're going to do a big South Carolinian hello, which looks a lot like this. I say, well, hey, y'all, and you say, well, bless your heart. Are you ready? Okay. Hey, y'all.
Well, bless your heart.
Thank you. Now I feel that we're in this thing together. I appreciate you doing that with me. Well, my friends, I grew up in the military, and I had the opportunity to live all over the world in the military. And when I was 18, I moved to Belgium, and I finished my senior year in Belgium. And part of the coolest thing about being in Belgium was that I could qualify for the international driver's license. Doesn't that sound exciting? And I wanted to be Carrie, international driver. So I studied for over a month, 100+ signs, international signs, and I aced that test. And I knew that the next day when I got in that car, it was going to be so easy, just like that test, right? So I got in the car with my Flemish driving instructor, and off we went down the cobblestone streets. And ladies and gentlemen, I saw before me something I had never seen before. I give to you the roundabout. Now, if you have ever navigated a roundabout in Europe, just by show of hands, has anybody done that? You know how quickly they enter and exit that roundabout, and the speed with which I saw these cars was terrifying to me. And I found myself trying to remember the signs that I saw on that test. And I found myself looking up and seeing a yield sign, but because I was so busy trying to navigate the action that I was going to take in this roundabout, I didn't register that as a yield sign. And so I didn't slow down. Instead, I entered the roundabout. And I came within inches of a collision that was life-changing. And when the horn stopped honking and people quit swearing at me in foreign languages, I looked at my driving instructor and he simply said, "Go." You know, like this was not the first time at the roundabout rodeo with an 18-year-old American driver. Now, why do I share this with you? I share this with you because navigating the mental health journey of a loved one, especially a spouse, can feel a lot like I did when I entered this roundabout. I was unprepared for the signs that I had to practically apply information for. And by the time I recognized that the first 10 years that I experienced with my spouse in low-level apathy had become a blaring jet engine of emotional discord, we were already in the mental health roundabout. And what that looked like for me was navigating each point in that roundabout that looked a lot like the signs and symptoms of isolation, apathy, indifference, lack of interest in experiencing things with friends and family, lack of interest in things that once brought joy, a growing need to escape, a growing need to spend more time in a dark room, alone. And as I realized that I was being catapulted as a passenger in this mental health roundabout, I did not have the answers. And we humans like information to fill the gaps in when the information is not coming from the driver. And so I started to look for ways that I could get that information. And I went to Dr. Google, who has been to Dr. Google before, to look up something. I went to Dr. Google and I studied everything I could about mental health, OCD, anxiety, depression, bipolar, the gamut, so that I could narrow down the signs and symptoms that I was seeing in my spouse. And what I learned was that the questions that I needed to ask were not, what's going on? The questions I needed to ask were things like this. What is your energy level today on a scale of 1 to 10? What is your physical ability today on a scale of 1 to 5? I have 5 things that I need to do today in the house. Can I ask you to do one of them? And when I shared this education and this communication pathway with my spouse, and it was met with a protective barrier, that education only touched the outside of that barrier. It never went in deeper. So then I thought, as we humans do, well, if it's not education, perhaps it's something that I'm doing. And I'm speaking specifically to the women in this audience. We love to nurture our family. We love to catapult them and excite them and give them confidence to go out into the world and fight dragons. And I, at this moment, was questioning my ability to do that with my spouse. And now it became about me. Maybe he's not attracted to me anymore. Maybe we're just not in a healthy marriage. Maybe he's just unhappy with me. And so as I pondered this and I reached out with this line of communication, there was even more retreat. Because what I have come to learn is that when you are already in this space of anxiety and repressed emotion, understanding that you may have disappointed the people that love you the most is painful, and you retreat more. So eventually, this line of communication went away because it wasn't working. And I started to feel, after years of being in this roundabout, I started to feel a secondhand depression, and that's my term. I coined it. It's not clinical. But I started to lose optimism and faith and hope that I was going to be able to navigate this as a passenger any further. And it was at this point that I had walked into a very dark bedroom and said to my spouse, "We have $300 left in our bank account. Is there any chance that you are going back to work?" Because now I'm operating in a survival space. Now the empathy is no longer there because the action of my spouse has not been taken to heal himself. And I realized that I was straddling the line between empathy and enablement for myself for a really long time, and that I was only half of the support team. The other half resided in him. And I cannot support what remains unspoken. And so as this unspoken car of silence continued in this roundabout, I found myself literally in survival mode, standing in that dark bedroom, asking for the very last thing that I could. And in that moment, he simply looked at me and said, "No, you will figure something out." Now, I know that this answer came from a deep place of being impacted by his mental health challenge, and that indifference had gone on for so long unaddressed that it was no longer even important to take action in that direction. And so that put me in a position to be a single mom on welfare, alone in my marriage, as I tried to navigate this experience with my spouse. Now, I can tell you men that there is nothing more painful than trying to show up and support somebody who continuously pushes away the people that are most precious to them in the moments that they need them the most. And this was my experience. And eventually, it came to a point where I had to leave because my own mental health in this secondhand depression was starting to be impacted, which meant that my children's mental health was starting to be impacted as well. My relationship ended in divorce after 10 years of being in this journey. Now, my friends, I don't share this with you to make you sad or depressed or feel bad for me. I share this with you because it is a cautionary tale that addressing mental health is everything. And when you keep pushing away the people that want to help you the most, you can put yourself at risk for losing them. And so I would ask you today, as you leave, to do these three things, men specifically, as we've heard from Joe and Brandon. Communicate. If you feel any inkling of discord within yourself, educate yourself on what you're experiencing. There is no excuse for lack of information. Dr. Google has everything you need, at least to get started. Number 2, be vulnerable with your people, including your children. You need as much support as you can get. Number 3, create a plan of action to get you into an exit off that mental health roundabout. And number 4, if you feel like what you are experiencing puts you at risk for losing your family, I need you to go home, and I need you to love your children and hug them a little bit longer. And I need you to hug your spouse and hug her even longer. And I need you to say these 3 sentences. I love you. I am experiencing things I do not understand. And I think I need help. And if you can say those 3 sentences, you have just increased your ability to heal with your support team. So please be vulnerable. Please take care of yourself. You are important. What you do, it matters in the world. How you show up as men matters to us as women. So please take care of your mind. If you were diabetic, you would get insulin. If you had cancer, you would get treatment. If you are struggling with mental health, seek help. It is there. Thank you so much for being with me in this 7-minute presentation, which is probably 8, but thank you anyway. I appreciate you.
Wow, what an amazing group of people. Thank you, Carrie and Brandon, Joe, Brandy. Thank you for putting this on. I'm not a psychologist like Dave. I'm an emotionologist, and I run a company called Counterfeit Emotions. And Counterfeit Emotions, the basic premise behind Counterfeit Emotions is that every authentic emotion we experience has a counterfeit. And we'll get into this in a little bit more depth. But I am so grateful every single person is here today, because as of right now, today, we are at the highest rate of suicide ever experienced in history. Ever. Not in a war, not in the Great Depression. It had the word depression in it. Right now, today, we're at the highest rate. The highest rate. And so, why is it important to understand our emotions, especially in this realm? It is so critical to understand our emotions, and what you're going to leave with today is you're going to leave with an entire shift in your mindset around emotions, and you're going to leave with one tool, one letter that can change fear into power. So let's go. We've got 7 minutes, 7 to 10 minutes, right, Sean? Okay, 7 to 10 minutes. Here we go. So what is a counterfeit emotion? A counterfeit emotion is an emotion that looks, acts, and feels like an authentic emotion, but it creates a destructive pattern of disconnection in our life. And every single person here has talked about connection. Counterfeits create disconnection in a destructive cycle. And that brings up the point, well, then what's an authentic emotion? An authentic emotion is an emotion that serves us, an emotion that takes us where we want to go. And I want to make sure that everyone knows there's no such thing as a bad emotion. There's no reason to feel shame because of our emotions. Every emotion we feel is a messenger. The trouble is when we turn messengers into dictators. Every emotion is a messenger. They're not dictators. And every authentic emotion has a counterfeit except for one. There's only one emotion in the entire spectrum that has no counterfeit, and that emotion is peace. Peace is the only emotion that can't be counterfeited. And there's 4 criteria to understand what you're feeling right now. If the emotion is authentic or if the emotion is counterfeit. The first of those is connection, then direction, motivation, and valuation. And someone said that the acronym is see the DMV. I thought that was kind of funny. Go see the DMV. If you want to check your emotions, go see the DMV. Connection, direction, motivation, and valuation. So let's get into it. Let's talk about each one of these. Let's talk about connection. Connection is connection in 4 areas. Does this emotion connect me to myself? Does it connect me to others? Does it connect me to God? And does it connect me to truth? If this emotion connects me, like love, I walked in and I saw Mary smile, this great big smile, and Crawford, and I immediately felt love, and Jessica's over there, and I felt love, I felt connection. That's authentic. The counterfeits, they disconnect us. They take us and they step us back. Well, what about the direction? And Carrie, you're going to like this one because of the direction. Every authentic emotion takes us forward, moves us upward, or brings us together. That's the direction of the emotion. And I thought when I started to research and came up with this concept that the opposite would be true for counterfeits. The opposite would be backwards, downwards, etc. But this is fascinating. Counterfeit emotions only have one direction. And every counterfeit emotion has the direction of leading back to itself. It's a circle. And we're going to talk about pain and misery today because that's so critical. Pain is actually an authentic emotion. And those that want to take their lives or try to take their lives, they don't want to end their life. They want to end their pain. Let me say that one more time. They don't want to end their life. They want to end their pain. And it turns out pain is an authentic emotion. And it has a very insidious counterpart, and that's misery. And if you think about the direction of pain, say it with me. Everybody say it. You know, what's the saying? No pain, no gain. Why? Because pain takes us somewhere. Pain moves us. Pain demands action. But misery, what's the saying with misery? Misery loves because it spins back to itself. Misery has to have more misery in order to thrive. And if we don't fuel it with more misery, it actually dies. It shrivels up. And misery has two base emotions, blame and shame. When you're in an attitude of blaming and shaming, you are diving deep into misery. And the reason we smother our pain with the misery is because the pain hurts. And we don't want to look at the pain. And so instead of looking at the pain, we smother it in this black tar. And I like to think of it as a diamond with a sharp point, and that point can cut, and that point can hurt, but it's brilliant and it demands our attention. But then we smother it in misery, this black tar, so we don't have to look at the pain. And it turns out pain is authentic. The third criteria to understanding our emotions is motivation. What is the motivation behind this emotion? Every authentic emotion is based in love and surrender. And surrender is one of my favorite emotions. It is one of the most transcendent emotions you can feel, is to surrender. And it doesn't mean resign. Resignation is the counterfeit of surrender. Surrender is beautiful. Surrender is transcendent. And the counterfeits, the motivation behind every counterfeit is fear and control. Every time we feel fear and control, we're in a counterfeit. And this one, for me personally, this one is a big one because I know what fear feels like. I know it. Does anybody else know what fear feels like? For me, I know it's a little bit different for everyone. For me, when I feel fear, I feel a constriction on my chest. I feel my breath getting shorter and more shallow. I feel this pressure. And I feel an anxiousness. That's fear. And when I feel that, I can immediately say, wait a minute, I'm feeling fear. I must be in a counterfeit right now. What am I feeling? And what is the path to the authentic emotion? Last year, Merriam-Webster said the word of the year, the most searched word of any word in the dictionary, was authenticity. We are craving for authenticity. So step into that space, step into the authentic, and let's take a look at the final. The final criteria is valuation. Where does this emotion value me at, and where does it value you at? If the emotion values us as divine beings having a human experience, that's authentic. If, on the other hand, the emotion says we're worthless and not divine, that's counterfeit. And not only does the counterfeit say we're worthless, it says we're worth less. That we're already at zero, but then we have to compare and make sure that we're even lower than that. And that's where the counterfeit comes in. And I want to talk about healing when broken. There's a really large list. There's 36 dyads of authentic and counterfeit emotions. I want to just briefly touch on these ones. The first one is pain and misery. Pain, it turns out, is an authentic emotion. And my entire life, I had a very dysfunctional relationship with pain. Incredibly dysfunctional. I thought if I was feeling pain, I was bad, or my choices were bad, or something was bad. There was bad associated with pain. I thought pain was the worst thing ever. And what I didn't realize is that I was actually heaping misery on top of the pain. And of all the authentic emotions, there's only a couple that are not meant to be held. Love is meant to be held. Surrender is meant to be held. All these beautiful emotions, abundance meant to be held. All of these things meant to be held. Pain is not. Even though it's an authentic emotion, it's not meant to be held. It's meant to flow through us. And like Brandon was saying, I just bottled it. And this was my relationship with pain. It would come into my life, and I would take it and I would shove it in that steel box in my heart, and I'm like, no way. You're right there. You're not getting out. But that's not the nature of pain. Pain is meant to flow through us. Pain is meant to drip out of our eyes. Pain is meant to be heard in quiet or loud sobs. Pain is meant to flow through us. Misery is what we use to trap pain. Blame and shame is what we use to trap pain inside, and that's not where it belongs. It wants to get out. It wants to move us to action. The second one on the list is guilt and shame. It turns out guilt is actually a beautiful, healthy emotion. And I don't know if you guys have seen it, but guilt is getting a bad rap these days. Everybody's saying, oh, that's such a guilt trip. Don't let him guilt you. Guilt comes from the Old English word gilden. The feeling of guilt is from gilden. Gilden means to make whole. Gilden means to repay. The feeling of guilt is to say, I want to make you whole. I want to repay. I know I've hurt you. And guilt is an important, beautiful emotion. We wouldn't be able to have civilized society if we didn't have guilt. If we didn't have guilt, there's only 4 personality types that can't feel guilt: narcissist, psychopath, sociopath, and antisocial behavior disorder. Can you imagine what the world would be like without guilt? Yikes, that's a pretty scary world. But shame is its insidious counterpart. It's counterfeit. Guilt says, I did something wrong and I want to make you whole. Shame says, I am wrong. It's probably your fault anyway. I'm going to blame you. Guilt says, I made a mistake. Shame says, my existence is a mistake. Guilt says, this action needs to be repaired. Shame says, this character will never be repaired. And that's why it's so insidious. And you might be surprised at the next one, that nice is actually the counterfeit of kind. Right now, I'm doing a 5-week men's master class with some men. We do regular meetings with men, some large meetings, and it's surprising how much nice can drive us to destructive patterns in our lives, and how much kind can drive us to healthy patterns. Yes, I'm saying stop being the nice guy. We'll talk more about that later afterwards. But the last one on here, faith and fear. Fear, if you remember, is a meta-emotion. It drives all counterfeits. And this is the tool that we're going to walk away with today, is we're going to learn how to take faith or fear and turn it into faith. And real quick, I want to talk about my friend Jerry. He's not Alex Boye. That's Alex Boye. But Jerry is the one on the right. And the way that I got into this, if you would have asked me 10 years ago if I'd be standing on this stage with Brandy, Vega, and these amazing people, I'd say no. I was a business owner, entrepreneur, started multiple businesses, etc., blah, blah, blah. And that was my path in life. And then I went through some really hard things where I had to take a different look at what pain meant. I had to take a different look, and that's where all of this came from. And along with that, my friend Jerry, this guy with the big happy grin, could make anyone laugh. He would walk in a room and everyone would light up. He was amazing. And a couple years ago, because Jerry didn't know the difference between pain and misery, because he didn't know the difference between guilt and shame, I lost Jerry to suicide. And I'm not okay with that. Because if he would have understood those differences, if he would have spent just the time to say, what am I feeling? And then express it like Brandon talked about and Joe, like just to express that, he would still be here. If he had the coin, which pocket is it in? It's in one of these coins. If he had the coin, he would still be here. If he had made the promise, he would still be here. So when you're feeling the pain, when you're feeling the guilt, when you're feeling the fear that drives all of the counterfeit emotions, let's talk about one letter that can change fear into power. There's just one. That's all it takes. One letter can change fear into power. And if you look at this sentence, it says, what if? I want you to pay attention right now to how you're feeling when I say this. What if I'm not good enough? What if I can't provide for my family? What if they're right and I'm worthless? How does that feel? It feels horrible. And there's one letter. If we take the F off and we change it to an S and we say, what is? What happens is we come to the present. What if projects a future that we don't even want? If we change the F and throw the F away and stick with the S and say, what is, then listen to how your heart feels when I say these sentences. Ready? Are you ready? Here we go. What is my next step? Do you feel the power in that? What is my support group? What is something I can do today? What is my mission? What is my purpose? What is my goal? Do you feel it? Do you feel the difference? There's power there. And my favorite Stoic, Seneca, he said, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. And the reason we do that is because we make up these stories, and these stories create this fear, which drives all the counterfeits. And perplexing on the past produces pain. Fretting on the future fuels fear. Only the present produces peace, that one emotion, and power. And so if you'd like to join the Facebook group, everyone that's here can join. It's an amazing, supportive community of people helping each other. And anybody that's here, we're actually going to give you a massive discount code if you want to dive deeper into these. And if you can't afford it, message me, and I'll give it to you anyway. So thank you so much for being here. Turn your fear into power and step into your authentic self.
Wasn't that incredible? Those are some good takeaways. I want to ask a question, just if you guys are okay with it. How many people in this room have been directly or indirectly affected by suicide? Can we just look around for a minute? That's a lot of people. And one of the things that you said, you weren't okay with losing your friend. You weren't okay with losing this Aaron. And what did he do and what did he say? Was he an expert? It's just a regular Joe. There's nothing regular about this guy. He paused and he said, I love you. I love you. I love you. Love. Love. Now, if only, dang it. We always say, I love you to death. Oh, I just love you to death. What if we could love them to life? What if we could love them to life? We can't, or there would be a lot of people still alive. And I know that. If we could, there would be a lot of lives saved. A lot of parents, a lot of spouses, a lot of children who could have loved their parent or their son or their daughter, mother. We can't. But what we can do is implement some of the things here that we've learned today. One thing I heard that was really strong to me throughout this 3-year journey was the people who jumped off the Twin Towers died by suicide. We didn't question whether they were weak or strong. I think often as men especially, but as women, as humans, we think we're weak. We think if somebody's struggling, maybe it's weak. But when we looked at that and we watched those people leap to their death from the top of a burning building, who felt all the destruction and despair and the lack of hope and the lack of connection and feeling like that was their only option, their only resource. People who die by suicide feel that same pain, that same fear, the same burning. We just don't see it. But what can we see? What can we do? What if there had been somebody up there with a resource or a tool? What if it was learning how to replace shame? There are things that we can do. This is the one thing in the world that is on the rise, and it's so preventable. We can't prevent a lot of things. This we can. How do we do it? We start here. We start today. I'm okay using guilt. I used that with my daughter. And I said, when you don't want to live for yourself, when you don't want to be here, can you live for me? Can you live for that little boy in the back who loves you so much? I wasn't above guilting her into staying. Because for the first time in 5 years, last month, she said she wanted to live. Will you all make the promise to live right now? Can I get you to do that? I'm not going to end this day without all of you who want to. I can't force you. But if you will make eye contact up here and say, I promise, raise your hand up with me, I promise, if I ever find myself in a dark place, that I will reach out to someone, a friend, a family member, a trusted resource, or call or text 988. Do you promise? Thank you. Will you guys get a few people to make the promise this week? If you've not had a coin, will you take a coin and make sure you give this to somebody? We had Cameron do this with his family. He went back and he talked to him. And he said, let's make this promise. Can you guys help spread the message? Can you think for just a minute who might need you today? And if it's you that needs someone, can you dig real deep right here and reach out and say, I'm not okay today. I was struggling this morning. Was I struggling this morning? It's okay to have a hard morning. I said, I need a hug. What's wrong? I don't know, I'm sad. It's okay to be sad. Even when you're doing good, it's okay to be sad. Those are emotions, right? Emotions are meant. I loved what you said, because you said it flows through you. What did you say about the tears? That was really good.
That pain is meant to drip out your eyes.
Yes, that's what it's doing. So we have a few minutes. I want to thank you guys for being here. Have you found value in what you learned today? Yes. We'll take maybe a couple of questions. We've got a great group up here, so if something resonated with you and you want to ask a question, please feel free to ask a question now. Is there anyone that has something for the panel? Not all at once. Yes? Okay, you gotta come get a mic. Or I'll come. This is Miss America's Teen 2020. Well, dang it. I read the top, not the bottom.
Okay, so what you guys are saying, coming from like me as a teen hearing this is so amazing. Over a year ago, I lost a friend to suicide, and it was really, really hard for me. And that is why I started reaching out to the Hope Hero Foundation with Alicia Butler over here. And I now get to be one of her ambassadors for that, and it made me realize that I'm not alone. And so hearing that the parents actually do care, because there's a lot of teens who they just feel worthless, and they feel that they don't have a place, they don't have anyone who really cares about them. They do. There's so many people, and I know that it's not just teens. I know that it's also women and men throughout the country that really need it. And so I really, really appreciate what you guys are doing. Thank you.
We take comments as well. Thank you, sweetie. I appreciate that.
Brandy, can I just make it's Carrie.
Yes.
I just wanted to comment because you mentioned teens, and I know that's something that all of us here genuinely care about, especially as parents. And I want to share that one part of this experience, all of these experiences, is educating our family members on what it means to be prepared to handle some of these mental health challenges. And so as parents, I think what we can do is to make mental health a part of regular conversation. If we normalize that we have to talk about these things, we will be able to prevent them sometimes from happening, or at least the impact of them will be lessened. And so just making mental health and the promise to live part of that dialogue of everyday conversation does make an impact. For me, I have 3 children, and they're all adult children now, but they have each said, thank you for making us part of your effort to understand, because they feel more empowered to manage their own mental health and take ownership of that. And so I just want to share the importance of that as parents. It's easy to talk about once you talk about it.
And a lot of people will say, my kids are fine. How do you know? Ask the question. These honest questions are going to get honest answers. You're not going to plant an idea. Either they are or they aren't, and wouldn't you rather know? And that gives you an opportunity to have this conversation. I mean, I talk to my kids about drugs and alcohol. Of course I'm going to talk about this. Talk to them about wearing a seatbelt. Of course I'm going to talk about this. Any other questions? Yes, dear. This is Carol. Hi, Carol.
Oh, thank you. It's kind of a question and a comment. Because as we meet each other, we say, how are you doing? And what's our response? Fine, okay. And I found this in myself, and if you're not okay, and I know that I've tried this in the past, and I, say, how are you doing? I'm, not really good today. And the blank look and the look, is like, oh, I don't really want to know. I'm not saying anyone in this room is like that. But, it does happen. And so I think it's finding those trusted people that we can go, you know what? It's really not a good day today. Do you have any other suggestions or comments on that?
Yeah, go ahead, panel.
I'm so glad you brought this up, because authenticity says that when you're having a tough day, it doesn't mean you dump, it doesn't mean you overload someone with all of your complaints. It just says, yeah, today I'm struggling. And when to truly be authentic and say that, it is something that you can open yourself up to. And when we hear that, oftentimes, like you said, it's like, oh, wait, that's not the standard answer. Hold on, time out. I don't know what to do right now. A great thing to say would be, tell me more. Tell me more. And then sit with them in their struggle. Sit with them in their pain. And just see their heart. See what they're going through. Thank you so much for bringing that up. And I hope that we all can do that. That we all can have those people that we know are safe. That we can change our language with. So that when we are struggling, we can say, you know what? Today's tough.
Can I add to that?
Absolutely.
So from the other side, somebody like myself they're afraid to ask me the question, how are you? Because they are afraid of the answer. And I know specifically somebody very near and dear to me was afraid of having to take responsibility for my feelings. And if he or she said something that put me over the edge, it's now their fault for the actions that I took. And whether, again, speaking more from my side, help the people who are asking that question say, hey, I'm not doing very well right now, and it's not your responsibility to fix it. Just be with me, empowers them to ask the question again and again, because that pressure's off. And it wasn't until I said, hey, I'm not doing well, and it's not your responsibility to take care of me, but I do appreciate you being with me, has made a big difference.
Great. Thank you.
I was going to mention from our support group standpoint, so I facilitate all of our men's support groups. For the men who come in, they're not all struggling with a mental health crisis. When we have guys who do come in, who do make the step and who do summon up the courage, our groups are called Courage to Bro. So when they summon up the courage to actually come, it's imperative that we all humanize 988. When I say humanize, I mean please, if at all possible, do not say, here's 988, call that number. What I suggest is what we do in our support group is I go into another room with these men and I call 988 with them. It's also very imperative that we know 988 is not just for people who are suffering with suicide ideation. 988 is call it to know what the resources are. We're partners with 988, so when men call, they can start referring them to our groups, our weekly group support groups. You know what your resources are. Please don't ever, if you have someone who's struggling in your life, do not just say, here's 988, please just call it. Call, do whatever it takes to call with them, and that's called humanizing that. Men won't call that 988 number for the most part. We won't. 8 out of 10 will not. It's just the fact. But what they will do in our support groups is they'll come with me, and they'll sit with me as I sit with them, and we'll call 988 together. And so it's imperative that that love is not just, I love you, bro, and not just to get you out of suicide ideation, but I love you, bro, I'm with you, I got you. Not just right now, but I'm with you, bro. And let's do that together, humanize some of this tough, cold, hard stuff. 988, we just see it just looks like a robot, reading that. I'm not gonna call it, I wouldn't. But I would call if like a close connection of mine made it like, I would say, gave me permission to feel those feels and call with him.
I feel like this is I'm sitting here with a lot of feelings and a lot of emotions, as I'm sure all of you guys are. I struggled with a child for 5 years, and when you feel like it's your responsibility to keep somebody alive, that's heavy, that's hard. It's hard not to own that, because I see where you're coming from, and then there's part of me going, well, I can't own that all the time to be somebody's savior. Like, you gotta lead them there, but you got to be willing. And I think one of the greatest things that I found in the last 3 years and really diving into this, it's not terminal. You're not at stage 4. We're here, and there are real solutions that get us to the foundation of the problem. Often we just Band-Aid. And we've got to rip the Band-Aid off and say, where is it in the core? Where do I need surgery? Is it figuring out my emotions? Is it regulating this? Is it going in and saying, you know what, my programs are all wrong. I've been programmed with, I've got bugs in my system. I need to delete that. I mean, imagine if we were all operating on our first iPhone without upgrading and without deleting any of the old data. That's our lives. We get bogged down, right? We get bogged down with programs and with beliefs and things that don't serve us. Every single person in this room right now, you have the ability today to say, you know what, this isn't serving me. How do I delete that program and reprogram? I need new software. Can somebody help me with new software? Guess what? Yes, you got a lot of amazing people in this room, and elsewhere that can give you upgrades. I need an upgrade. We all need an upgrade. We all need maintenance. It's not terminal. So I think that's one of the greatest things is there is hope. It's not your responsibility. You can't save everybody. I had a lady who dealt with this with her son. He's in his 40s. She said, I finally just had to reconcile. I've done everything I can. Like, I just hope, it is a fine balance because we do need love, we do need support, but that guilt and that shame of what we carry as caretakers, as people with it, you know, when you're struggling, you're like, I can't help how I feel right now. But as we learn, we grow, and we go, okay, well, I know that this song gets me pumped. I know that this food or this person or whatever, and we start finding tools. And that's kind of what Promise to Live in this group is about. We want you to find the resource. We want you to know the resources. We want to put the net at the top and not the ambulance at the bottom because we're here, because there's help. There's hope for you. There's hope for the people that you're around. And we want you to join us. The rising shift lifts all. The rising water lifts all ships. We're on this journey together. Question?
Can I say something?
You may say, why don't you come up here? You're part of the team. And we got 1 minute. Yes, please. Up on the stage.
So I don't know why I feel like I need to say this. Maybe it's for someone here. So my daughter Brooklyn is not here today. She's out moving into her new home. And 15 years ago, we went through multiple suicide attempts in our home. And she was on suicide watch in our home for 7 or 8 months, and then for 12 of the last 15 years. And I used to sit by her door, and it would be shut. And I would say, Brooklyn, can you promise me 24 hours? And she would say yes. So a few months ago, Brooklyn and I had a conversation about that. And she said this, and so I'm sharing this from Brooklyn. After 15 years, Brooklyn got married this last year. Now she's moving into her home and she's back in school. But she said, Dad, I didn't make the promise for you. I made the promise for me. Make sure that people know that you're not asking them to make the promise for you, that it's for that person. And she said, Dad, when you asked me to make the promise, I knew that you knew that I had the ability in myself to keep the promise. I just think that's really important because we have 15 years of promises. And so I don't know why I'm sharing that. I don't share things very often, but somebody here needs to know, don't go home with this and say to your kids, do this for me. No, do this for them. Do it for you. When I learned that it wasn't about me, it was about Brooklyn, healing began. And as long as it was about me, we didn't make progress. So anyway, I just want to share that, Brandy.
Thank you for sharing that.
Brandy, you brought up something really important, is that if you look at the emotional frequency scale, every emotion has a frequency, and there's positive frequency emotions and negative frequency emotions, and at the very bottom are shame and apathy. The very bottom emotions are shame and apathy. And previously, we used to put guilt and shame together. You look at all the studies, the historical studies, guilt and shame were combined. It was a study on guilt and shame. Now, Brené Brown, as well as University of Switzerland, separated the two. And they said, what is the relationship between shame and bullying, drug use, sexual promiscuity, and suicidal ideation? And they found that shame is the way in to all of those. Shame is a direct path into suicidal ideation. And for the first time, they flipped it, and they did the same study with guilt. And they said, okay, let's take a look at what guilt does for these same things. And the fascinating thing is guilt is the way out. When we feel guilt, that feeling of I want to repair, I want to make whole, whether it's someone else or ourselves, it's actually the way out of suicidal ideation, drug use, pornography. It's the way out of addiction. Guilt is actually the tool that we use to get out of it. Shame is the way in, guilt is the way out.
Yeah, and I encourage everyone to shift that in your mind. That one simple shift can change everything.
I just would love to add to that for just a minute, Curtis, because I think what's also a really important part of this dynamic is that your operating system sometimes just is not working. And sometimes the medical path of getting that help so that you can regulate your brain and your body is key to giving it breathing room so that you can assess some of these things and figure out what is counterfeit and what is real and how do I move forward. And so if you're struggling with any of those things for a prolonged period of time, perhaps it's time to seek medical intervention and really get that help and give your body and your mind a break. And there is no shame in that, because it is for the benefit of yourself and everyone involved that you give yourself that break. And so I would encourage you to do all of that. And it's amazing with that pause, how much shame no longer comes into that space sometimes, that you can give yourself that pause and feel like you can move forward and take that step. And I want to applaud anybody in this room that has battled suicidal ideation and has come out on the other side. Because suicidal ideation was part of my mental health roundabout journey with my spouse, not for me, but for him. And living in that kind of space all the time of wondering if you're going to be the person responsible to making sure that they don't take that step is huge. And it's heavy. So thank you to Brandon for owning that journey in yourself, because that is where it starts. And so I applaud anybody who has had that ownership journey, and I just want to say thank you. So thank you.
I agree with that. You're very brave. Thank you for sharing. I know it's vulnerable. It's hard being up here. I know I put a dress on, but I often feel naked standing up here because it's just uncomfortable. This isn't something I love talking about. I'll talk to you about production all day, but this is kind of uncomfortable. But in order for us to grow sometimes, and in order for us to take the pain into purpose, and because I promised God I'd do whatever he wanted if I got the second chance, and I did, I'm up here. I fight through it. We want to make this a win. So I would encourage you guys, thank you again for being here. If this resonates with you and if you want to be part of the solution with us, please talk to me or my advisory team. Can you guys raise your hands if you're on my advisory team? Do you see all these wonderful people around here? Please talk to one of us if you guys want to get involved. We've got events coming up. We're doing community connection. We're doing a global live stream where we can reach millions. We're doing a national TV show that starts this fall. We can put these tools out there to the world. This is one stage, and this is powerful. But we've been given an opportunity. I've had 117 countries come to Promise to Live. That's pretty awesome. We want to provide tools and resources. Thank you. It's been a hard-fought battle. It's been 3 years of blood, sweat, and tears, but I would invite you to join us. I would invite you to make and share the Promise to Live. I would invite you to go home and talk to the people you love. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope that you guys have a great day. Thank you, guys.